Forbidden origins and hidden myths of ancestry. From the beginning of time, humanity has asked the same question: where do we come from? What is our true origin? Why are we here? Across cultures and across ages, the answers given have never been the same, yet they carry echoes of a forbidden story, a story that speaks of beings who came from above, a story of rebellion and conflict, a story of floods and fire, a story of races and nations scattered across the earth, a story that whispers of a past too strange and too dangerous to tell openly. In the official histories taught in schools, humanity is presented as a simple progression: ape to man, stone to bronze, tribe to civilization, the story of slow evolution and gradual progress. But when we turn to the ancient texts, when we listen to the voices of the first civilizations, the story is different. They do not speak of slow progress. They speak of sudden beginnings. They speak of knowledge given from above. They speak of shining beings who walked among men. They speak of wars in heaven. They speak of floods that wiped the world clean. They speak of the scattering of peoples. They speak of forbidden origins. The myths of Sumer tell of the Anunnaki, those who came from the sky, those who divided the earth, those who fashioned mankind. The tablets say humanity was created to bear the burdens of the gods, not by chance, not by accident, but by decision, by intervention. Humanity born in the shadow of rebellion among the divine. The texts of Babylon tell of Marduk, who fought the dragon Tiamat, who split her body to form heaven and earth, creation born from battle, the earth itself, the scar of celestial war. Humanity created to serve the victors of that war, forbidden origins preserved in clay. The scriptures of Egypt tell of Ra and of Osiris, of Isis and of Set, gods who ruled upon the earth before kings, dynasties of divine beings who shaped the Nile Valley, who taught men agriculture and architecture, who fought among themselves for rule, forbidden origins carved in stone and preserved in hieroglyphs. The traditions of India speak of Devas and Asuras, eternal enemies, battles fought in the skies with shining weapons. Humanity caught in the middle, guided by avatars of Vishnu, guided by celestial wisdom. Forbidden origins preserved in the Vedas and epics that still live in song. The Bible speaks of a garden, of a serpent, of forbidden knowledge, of angels who fell, of giants born of unions between the sons of God and the daughters of men, of floods sent to cleanse, of towers built to reach the sky, of tongues scattered to divide the nations, forbidden origins whispered through scripture, preserved in fragments, preserved in prophecy. The Norse myths speak of Odin and his brothers, who slew the giant Ymir, who fashioned the world from his corpse, of a tree that connects heaven and earth, of giants who warred against gods, forbidden origins preserved in sagas, told by firelight across the frozen north. Everywhere the story is the same: creation shaped by conflict, humanity born from the decisions of beings greater than us, humanity scattered by war and judgment, races and nations divided by tongues and geography, yet all pointing back to a beginning that was forbidden, a beginning too strange for the modern mind to accept, a beginning remembered only in myth, a beginning buried by official history. Why are these origins called forbidden? Because they challenge the accepted story. Because they suggest humanity is not merely the product of blind chance. Because they reveal we were shaped by contact, by intervention, by beings who came from beyond. Because they hint that our divisions as peoples, as cultures, as nations, are not random but the result of ancient decisions, ancient conflicts, ancient judgments. To speak of these things is to break the silence, to unveil what has been hidden, to speak forbidden history. In this journey we will walk through the oldest texts. We will listen to the myths of every land. We will read the stones and the scriptures. We will compare the fragments. We will see the pattern, We will uncover the forbidden origins of humanity. We will see how ancient peoples explained their roots. We will see how myths of shining ancestors became legends of race. We will see how forbidden knowledge was preserved in symbols. We will see how the war in heaven shaped the birth of mankind. We will see that our story is not simple. We will see that our origins are vast, cosmic, and strange. This is not a tale of superiority. This is not a tale of one people against another. This is the tale of all humanity. For all cultures carry fragments of the same story. All tribes remember the same war. All nations preserve the same flood. The details differ, but the memory is the same. Humanity remembers because humanity was born in the shadow of that war. We are the children of forbidden origins, and our myths are our testimony. So let us begin at the beginning. Let us walk back into the deserts of Mesopotamia, into the ruins of Sumer, into the clay tablets of the first cities. Let us listen to the voices that have slept for thousands of years. Let us hear what they say of the gods who came from above, of the rebels who defied heaven, of the humans who were made in the aftermath. Let us begin the journey into forbidden history, into forbidden archaeology, into forbidden origins. Let us see what ancient texts reveal about humanity's roots, the first civilizations, and their myths of ancestral beings. When we look at the ruins of the first civilizations, we are struck not only by their age, but by their suddenness. Sumer rises almost from nothing. Egypt blooms along the Nile with fully formed writing and monuments. The Indus Valley builds cities with drains and streets. Mesoamerica raises pyramids aligned with the stars. It is as if knowledge was poured into humanity at once, as if guidance came from beyond, and the people themselves remembered it that way. They did not say they invented it. They said they were taught. They said the gods, the shining ones, the ancestors from above gave them the skills. They preserved the memory of those ancestral beings in myth and ritual. In Sumer, the people spoke of the Anunnaki, those who from heaven to earth came. They were the givers of kingship, the teachers of law, the keepers of astronomy. They were also divided. Enlil, the stern lord of air, Enki, the wise lord of water, Inanna, the queen of heaven and war, Marduk, who rose to rule in Babylon. Their tablets speak of rebellion, of younger gods refusing labor, of humanity created to serve in their place. Clay tablets, older than empires, tell of this forbidden origin, mankind as a solution to divine conflict, not an accident of nature, but a deliberate act shaped by heavenly war. The Babylonians inherited this memory and preserved it in the Enuma Elish, the great creation epic. It tells of Tiamat, the mother of chaos, rising in anger, leading an army of monsters against the younger gods. It tells of Marduk, who volunteered to fight, armed with storms and net and bow. He slays Tiamat, splits her body, fashions the heavens and the earth. From her blood and bones he makes the world. From the blood of her ally Kingu, he fashions mankind. The story is violent, raw, yet it echoes the same theme. Creation, born of rebellion. Humanity created from the blood of a rebel god. Forbidden origins told in myth but carrying fragments of memory. In Egypt, the myths speak of gods who ruled before men. Ra the sun, Osiris the king, Isis the mother, Set the usurper, Horus the avenger. Their battles shaped the Nile and the throne. The pharaohs claimed descent from them, not as metaphor, but as reality. They were children of the gods, heirs of divine kings. Their monuments aligned with the stars to mirror the heavens on earth. The pyramids rising like eternal mountains for the souls of the divine rulers. The myths say that before human dynasties, the gods themselves reigned, and when their wars ended, men inherited the throne. Forbidden origins remembered in hieroglyphs and stone. The Indus Valley remains silent in words, its script undeciphered, but its ruins speak cities with drains, baths, and order, evidence of knowledge that seemed to arrive complete. The Vedic texts written later speak of the gods, the devas and asuras, battles in the sky, the churning of the ocean, the descent of wisdom, humans guided by avatars, humans born into cycles shaped by cosmic wars, again forbidden origins, humanity placed within a story of gods who struggled among themselves and men who were taught by them. In China, the ancient myths tell of Nuwa, who fashioned mankind from clay, of emperors descended from heaven, of dragons that taught wisdom, of battles between heavenly emperors fought with thunder and floods, the yellow emperor riding on a dragon, inventing the compass, the calendar, the medicine. He is not remembered as a man alone, but as a semi-divine ancestor, a culture hero born of heaven. Humanity's origins again tied to beings greater than men, forbidden origins preserved in legend. In Mesoamerica, the Maya and the Aztecs spoke of gods who sacrificed themselves to create the sun, of Quetzalcoatl, the feathered serpent who gave corn and knowledge, of Tezcatlipoca, who warred with his brother, of ages destroyed and renewed, of floods and fires that wiped the world clean before men rose again. They believed their kings carried divine blood. They built pyramids as mountains of the gods, aligned with Venus and the sun. They remembered beings who descended, shining, feathered, winged. Beings who brought both wisdom and war, forbidden origins preserved in codices and stone carvings. In the Andes, the people of Tiwanaku told of Viracocha, the great creator who walked across the land teaching humanity, who brought light after darkness, who shaped the first men from stone, then destroyed them in flood, then made a new race who departed across the sea promising to return. He is remembered as bearded, robed, shining, an ancestor not of one people, but of mankind, forbidden origins walking across the highlands, leaving ruins of impossible stone at Pumapunku. Everywhere we see the same pattern. Humanity does not claim to have invented civilization. Humanity remembers being taught, remembers gods who descended, remembers wars among them, remembers floods and fires, remembers division of tongues and scattering of nations, remembers that their roots are not simple, that their origins are forbidden, too strange, too powerful to speak of plainly, yet preserved in myth, so they would not be lost. These first civilizations did not see their gods as distant abstractions. They saw them as ancestors, as beings who lived among them, who intermarried, who ruled, who punished, who guided. Their myths are not mere fables. They are genealogies. They are lineages. They are claims that kingship itself was given from above, that law itself was divine, that writing itself was a gift, that astronomy itself was taught. They remembered their roots as forbidden, as heavenly, as born from conflict, and they built their monuments to honor that memory. Thus, when we study the first civilizations, we must ask, why do they all speak of gods who came from the sky? Why do they all speak of battles in heaven? Why do they all speak of floods and resets? Why do they all claim descent from divine ancestors? Why is the story the same in Sumer, in Egypt, in India, in China, in the Americas? The answer forbidden history gives is that they were remembering the same truth. The war in heaven was real. The beings who fought it touched the earth. Humanity was born in its shadow, and the first civilizations preserved that memory as best they could, through myth, through ritual, through stone. The myths of ancestral beings are not primitive tales. They are echoes of forbidden origins. They are testimonies of humanity's roots. They are the voices of our first ancestors saying, "We were not alone. We were guided. We were shaped. We were divided. We were judged. We were preserved." The forbidden story of our beginning, whispered across time, waiting for us to hear it again. Mesopotamian and Sumerian roots of humanity. When we walk among the ruins of Mesopotamia, we are walking on the soil of the first known civilization. Here the Sumerians built cities with walls on temples. Here they created writing in the form of cuneiform pressed into clay. Here they recorded myths and lists of kings, laws and hymns, astronomy and mathematics. And here in these tablets we find the earliest accounts of humanity's origin. Forbidden accounts that differ greatly from the modern view. Accounts that tell us mankind was created as a servant race, created in the aftermath of rebellion among the gods. The Sumerians called their gods the Anunnaki, the ones who came down from heaven. They were not distant. They were rulers, teachers, judges, and sometimes destroyers. Their temples rose like mountains. Their rituals honored the gods as lords and masters. The tablets tell us these gods divided the earth among themselves. They argued, they fought, they ruled in cycles, and humanity was their creation. Humanity was born from the needs of the gods, not from random chance, not from evolution, but from intervention. The Atrahasis epic tells the story in detail. The lesser gods, known as the Ikigai, were forced to toil. They dug canals. They worked the land. They grew weary. They rebelled against Enlil, surrounding his house, shouting in anger, demanding relief. The Anunnaki gathered in council, and Enki the Wise One offered a solution. Let us create man to bear the burden. Let man take the work of the gods. So from clay mixed with the blood of a slain god, humanity was fashioned, the first men created to serve, their purpose written from the start, their destiny tied to rebellion, forbidden origins etched into clay. In this story, mankind is not master, but servant. Mankind is not free, but bound, our very creation, an answer to celestial rebellion, our very life shaped by a war in heaven. The gods relieved of toil, men placed beneath them. This is not the story we are told today, but it is the story the Sumerians told themselves, the oldest story we have of human origin, forbidden because it challenges the narrative of freedom, forbidden because it tells us we are children of rebellion. The Sumerian king list reinforces the theme. It says kingship descended from heaven. It was not invented by men. It was given. The first kings reigned for thousands of years. Their rule measured not in decades, but in millennia. Their power beyond human. Then came the flood. Then the kingship was lowered again. The pattern clear. Divine beings ruled first. Men ruled after. Kingship a gift from above. Power an inheritance from the gods. The origins of government and law themselves forbidden. For they did not rise from men, but from heaven. The flood story appears again and again in Mesopotamian texts, in the tale of Ziusudra, in the Atrahasis epic, in the epic of Gilgamesh. The gods decided to cleanse the world, to destroy the humans they had made. But one man was warned, told to build a boat, told to preserve life. The flood came. The world was wiped clean. Humanity began again. The flood is not myth alone. It is memory of a reset, a memory preserved in every culture, a judgment tied to forbidden origins, a cleansing of corruption that came from rebellion among heavenly beings. The epic of Gilgamesh itself is filled with echoes of forbidden history. Gilgamesh, 2/3 divine and 1/3 man, a hybrid of heaven and earth, mighty yet restless. He seeks immortality. He meets Utnapishtim, the survivor of the flood. He learns that life is fragile, that man cannot escape death, yet his own semi-divine nature speaks of unions between gods and mortals, forbidden unions that echo the Nephilim of the Bible, forbidden origins remembered as heroes and kings. The myths also speak of Enki and Enlil, brothers in conflict. Enlil stern, harsh, demanding obedience. Enki wise, merciful, cunning, often defying Enlil to help mankind. Their quarrels shape the fate of men. Their division echoes the heavenly war. Gods divided, rebellion within their ranks. mankind the pawn and the prize, forbidden origins recorded not as legend, but as history to the Sumerians, who saw their gods as real rulers, not abstractions. The Anunnaki were not alone. There were also spirits of the underworld, demons, beings who brought sickness and disaster, among them Lilith, Lamashtu, Pazuzu, figures remembered in amulets and incantations, the memory of fallen or rebellious spirits, preserved in names that would echo into later traditions, demons feared as remnants of forbidden origins, shadows of the war in heaven, haunting the lives of men. Why does Mesopotamia matter so much? Because it is the cradle, because it is the first written memory, because it shaped the stories that would spread into Babylon, into Assyria, into Canaan, into Israel, into Greece, into Rome. The forbidden origins of humanity, preserved first in Sumer, became the foundation of myth across the world. These Anunnaki became the shining ones of Egypt, the gods of Olympus, the angels and demons of the Bible, the Devas and Asuras of India. The pattern repeated, the memory preserved, the war in heaven remembered always. Archaeology shows us temples like ziggurats rising toward the heavens, stairways for the gods to descend, altars for offerings, statues of winged beings guarding gates, carvings of gods holding strange tools, all pointing to beings not like us, beings who were remembered as real, their presence shaping law, agriculture, astronomy, the very structure of civilization. Forbidden archaeology, revealing that the myths were not mere stories, but reflections of encounters with beings remembered as gods. The legacy of Mesopotamia is the legacy of forbidden origins, mankind as servant, mankind as hybrid, mankind as survivor of flood, mankind as child of rebellion, the Anunnaki as rulers and teachers, the Igigi as rebels, Enki as friend of man, Enlil as stern master, Marduk as conqueror of chaos, Gilgamesh as semi-divine hero, Ziusudra as survivor of judgment, all fragments of a forbidden story that tells us we were born not in isolation, but in the aftermath of war in heaven, not by chance, but by design, not by peace, but by rebellion. Thus, when we read the clay tablets, when we walk among the ruins, when we see the broken statues and the silent ziggurats, we are not only seeing the past of one people, we are seeing the first record of our own origins. We are hearing the first voice that told the truth forbidden, that humanity was created in the shadow of divine conflict, that our roots are tangled with rebellion, that our story begins with the war in heaven, Egypt, and the divine kings as ancestors of mankind. When we turn from the plains of Mesopotamia to the valley of the Nile, we find another civilization rising in majesty. Here, pyramids tower against the desert sky. Here, temples line the river. Here, walls and tombs are carved with symbols of eternity. Egypt preserved more than stone. It preserved memory. It preserved a vision of human origin that was forbidden, a vision that told of divine kings, of gods who ruled before men, of a lineage that connected humanity directly to beings from the heavens. The ancient Egyptians spoke of Zep Tepi, the first time, an age when gods themselves walked upon the earth. They did not speak of myth as we use the word today. They spoke of history. They believed that before dynasties of men, there were dynasties of gods, that Ra ruled from the sun, that Osiris reigned upon the throne, that Isis and Horus preserved the order, that Set rebelled and brought chaos. Their temples recorded the names of these divine rulers as if they were kings of flesh and blood. Their reigns measured not in years, but in thousands of years, their struggles shaping the Nile Valley long before man. The gods of Egypt were not distant abstractions. They were beings of power, some depicted with human form, some with heads of falcon or jackal, some as serpents, some as radiant kings, each form symbolic, each carrying a deeper meaning. Ra the Sun Lord, Osiris the king of life and death, Isis the mother, Set the usurper, Thoth the scribe of wisdom, Horus the avenger. They fought among themselves, they ruled, they were overthrown, they were avenged. Their stories echo the war in heaven, rebellion, loyalty, death, resurrection, judgment, forbidden origins carved into stone. The pharaohs claim descent from these divine kings, not as metaphor, but as reality. They were called sons of Ra. Their throne was the throne of Horus. Their crowns carried symbols of Upper and Lower Egypt united. Their role was not only political but cosmic. They preserved Ma'at, the divine order. Their bloodline was sacred because it connected humanity to heaven. Their rule legitimized because they were heirs of the gods. This was not ideology, but belief. It was their memory of forbidden origins. That kingship itself came from above. The pyramids themselves stand as testimony, aligned with stars, with shafts pointing to Orion and Sirius, with geometry that encodes knowledge of earth and sky, built not as tombs alone, but as eternal machines of ascension, stairways for the soul to rise, monuments to the link between man and heaven. Their design echoes the ziggurats of Mesopotamia, but with even greater precision. They stand as silent witnesses of a forbidden past when gods ruled and men built in their honor. The texts carved within tombs, the pyramid texts, the coffin texts, the Book of the Dead, all preserve fragments of forbidden origins. They speak of journeys to the stars, of reunions with Ra, of battles with serpents of chaos, of divine judgment in the hall of Ma'at, of hearts weighed against the feather of truth. They speak of pharaohs ascending to join the gods, to take their place among them. They speak of man not as isolated, but as connected, as descended, as destined to return to the divine realm. Forbidden origins preserved as funerary ritual, but rooted in memory of heavenly ancestry. The myth of Osiris is the heart of Egypt. Osiris, the good king, murdered by his brother Set, dismembered and cast into the Nile, Isis his wife gathering the pieces, resurrecting him long enough to conceive Horus. Horus growing to avenge his father, to battle Set, to claim the throne. This cycle of death and rebirth is not only myth, it is memory of rebellion, of war among the gods, of divine kingship interrupted and restored, of a lineage that passed from gods to men, forbidden history preserved in sacred drama. The god Thoth, the scribe, was said to have given writing, mathematics, and wisdom. He recorded the laws. He taught the arts. He was the memory of the gods. He preserved their secrets in hidden books, forbidden knowledge guarded because it was too powerful. The Egyptians remembered him as real, not as fable. They built temples in his honor. They called upon his wisdom in ritual. They saw him as ancestor of their own scribes and priests. Once again, forbidden origins in the guise of myth, but functioning as genealogy of knowledge. Even the afterlife itself was tied to forbidden origins. The Duat, the underworld, was filled with gates guarded by gods, rivers of fire, serpents of chaos, judgment halls, cosmic battles. The soul of the deceased reenacted the war in heaven, faced the same trials, sought to align with the loyal gods against the rebels. The afterlife was not escape, but participation in the cosmic conflict, a reflection of humanity's true origin as children of a heavenly war. Egyptian civilization preserved this vision for millennia. Their monuments still stand, as if to defy time. Their symbols still radiate mystery. Their memory still whispers. They tell us humanity is descended from divine kings, that our rulers once were gods, that our blood is mixed with heaven, that our laws and knowledge came from the scribes of the gods, that our destiny is to return to the stars. Forbidden origins preserved in stone, forbidden because they tell us we are not as we think. We are not alone. We are not simply human. We are children of a war among the gods. When we compare Egypt to Mesopotamia, we see the same themes: divine rulers, rebellion among gods, humanity created or shaped in the aftermath. Floods, wars, knowledge given, monuments built to mirror heaven. Both cultures remember the same truth but in different voices. The Sumerians spoke of Anunnaki, the Egyptians of Neteru. The Sumerians wrote of Igigi rebelling, the Egyptians carved of Set. Killing Osiris, different names, different lands, the same forbidden origin. The priests of Egypt preserved their records in secret libraries, scrolls hidden, wisdom passed only to initiates. The Greeks later claimed to learn from Egypt. Herodotus wrote of mysteries. Plato spoke of Atlantis, based on Egyptian priests. The Hellenistic world inherited fragments, yet the core remained in Egypt. The forbidden story of divine kings, of gods who ruled before men, of humanity descended from heaven. So when we walk among the ruins of Giza, when we sail past the temples of Luxor, when we read the inscriptions of Abydos, we are not only seeing a dead civilization, we are seeing a living memory of forbidden origins. We are hearing the voice of ancestors telling us that humanity was shaped by gods, that our kings were their heirs, that our story is cosmic, not earthly, that our roots are divine but divided, that our true origin is forbidden because it reveals too much, because it tells us the war in heaven was real, and we are its children. Indo-European myths of sky beings and ancestral fathers. When we leave the Nile and the rivers of Mesopotamia and travel north and west into the ancient lands of Europe, we find another set of myths, different in language, yet strikingly similar in theme. The peoples who spoke Indo-European tongues, from the steppes to the islands, from India to Ireland, preserved stories of sky fathers, of storm gods, of titans and giants, of ancestors who were more than human. Their myths also tell us of forbidden origins. They remember wars in heaven. They remember the shaping of man by divine hands. They remember ancestral fathers whose blood was not entirely mortal. The Indo-European traditions stretch across vast lands and millennia, yet within them we see common motifs. There is always a sky father. There is always a storm god. There is always a serpent or dragon to be slain. There is always a war among divine beings. There are always heroes who are half divine. There are always cycles of destruction and renewal. These are not isolated fables. They are fragments of a shared memory, the forbidden memory of humanity's roots. In the Greek tradition, the story begins with Uranus, the sky, who fathered the first generation of Titans. But Uranus was cruel. He imprisoned his children, and so his son Cronus rose in rebellion. He castrated his father. He took his throne. But Cronus too was overthrown, for he devoured his children, fearing they would rise against him. His wife Rhea saved Zu, who grew and rebelled. He cast down his father. He freed his siblings. Together they waged war against the Titans, the Titanomachy, a war in heaven. The Titans thrown into Tartarus, the Olympians rising to rule, forbidden origins remembered in myth, gods at war, rebellion, loyalty, victory. The Greek myths continue with the Gigantomachy, the war of gods against giants, monstrous beings who rose to overthrow Olympus, but were defeated, often with the help of demigods, heroes who were born of unions between gods and mortals. Heracles most of all. The pattern repeats: rebellion, war, hybrid offspring, forbidden unions, divine blood mixed with human. Forbidden origins embodied in the heroes of Greece. In the Norse myths, the same pattern appears. In the beginning, there was Ginnungagap, the great void. From ice and fire emerged Ymir, the primordial giant, the first being, and from him came other giants. But Odin and his brothers slew Ymir. They fashioned the world from his body. His blood became the sea, his bones the mountains, his skull the sky, his hair the forests. Again, creation is born of violence, the world shaped from a slain ancestor. forbidden origins echoing the Babylonian story of Marduk and Tiamat, creation born from divine war. The Norse myths continue with tales of gods and giants locked in endless struggle. Thor the Thunderer fighting Jormungandr the Serpent, Odin seeking wisdom at the cost of his eye, Ragnarok, the final battle when gods and giants destroy one another, leaving the world reborn, forbidden origins in mythic form, rebellion, conflict, destruction, renewal. Always the theme of heavenly war shaping the destiny of man. The Celtic traditions also remember divine ancestors, the Tuatha De Danann, the people of the goddess Danu, who came from across the sea, who brought knowledge, who fought the Fomorians, monstrous beings of chaos. The battles echo the wars of gods and giants, the Tuatha eventually fading into the mounds, remembered as the fairy folk. But once rulers, once divine, once ancestors, forbidden origins preserved in folk tales and legend. The Vedic traditions of India are also Indo-European, and in them we see the same story. Indra the storm god slays Vritra, the serpent who held back the waters, creation born of violence, the Devas and Asuras in endless conflict, the gods of light against the forces of shadow mankind caught between, guided by avatars, taught by sages, forbidden origins told in hymns of the Rig Veda, remembered in epics like the Mahabharata and the Ramayana, wars fought with celestial weapons, heroes, born of gods and mortals, forbidden unions, creating mighty warriors. The same pattern across Atiumastuhusu and Kiuos, European world. The common thread in all these traditions is clear. Creation is not peaceful, it is born of conflict. The first beings are slain, their bodies used to fashion the world. Rebellion is constant, ways overthrow fathers. Brothers battle. Giants rise against gods. Serpents are slain by storm lords, and humanity is shaped in the aftermath, sometimes created directly, sometimes born as hybrids, sometimes guided by avatars, but always connected, always the child of divine conflict, always the heir of forbidden origins. The Indo-European myths also speak of cycles, ages of gold, silver, bronze, and iron in Hesiod's Greece, yugas of truth and decline in India, endless cycles of rise and fall in Norse Ragnarok. Humanity never fixed, always moving through ages, always linked to heavenly battles, always at risk of destruction, always preserved for renewal. Forbidden origins remembered, not only as a beginning, but as a cycle repeating, as if the war in heaven never ended, as if it continues in every age. Heroes play a central role, and they are always hybrids. Achilles, son of a goddess, Heracles, son of Zeus, Arjuna, guided by Krishna, Cuchulain, son of a god, Siegfried with dragon's blood, all carry within them the mark of forbidden unions, divine and human mingled, their strength immense, their destiny tragic. They are saviors and destroyers, yet they embody humanity's dual nature, noble and corrupt, light and shadow, forbidden origins written into their bloodlines. What does this tell us? It tells us that the Indo-European peoples also remembered the war in heaven, also remembered rebellion, also remembered forbidden unions, also remembered being guided and shaped by divine beings. Their myths are not isolated. They echo Sumer and Egypt. They echo the Bible and India. They are part of the same forbidden story. Humanity's origin shaped by conflict among the divine. Humanity scattered. Humanity divided. Humanity remembering in fragments. When we study Zeus' way, hurling thunder, when we read of Odin slaying Ymir, when we hear of Indra killing Vritra, when we tell the tale of Heracles or Arjuna or Cuchulain, we are hearing echoes of the same forbidden truth, that humanity is not alone, that humanity is born in the shadow of a cosmic war, that our ancestors we're not only human, that our roots are forbidden, too strange to accept, yet too persistent to forget. Thus, the Indo-European myths join the chorus. They tell us, our sky fathers were not fables but memories. They tell us our storm gods were not inventions, but reflections of real beings. They tell us our heroes were not only imagination, but echoes of hybrids born of forbidden unions. They tell us that humanity carries in its blood the legacy of rebellion and loyalty, of divine and mortal, of light and shadow. They tell us our origins are forbidden because they reveal the war. And heaven was real, and we are its children. Greek and Roman traditions of founding races and heroes. When we turn our eyes to Greece and Rome, we see not only the splendor of temples and marble statues, but also the memory of forbidden origins hidden in myth. The Greeks told stories of races that came before, of ages that rose and fell, of heroes who were children of gods and mortals. The Romans inherited these tales and added their own, linking their empire to divine ancestry, claiming descent from Trojan survivors, from Venus herself. These myths were not idle poetry. They were the memory of ancestry, the echo of a time when divine beings mingled with men, the forbidden history of founding races and heroes. Hesiod the poet spoke of the 5 ages of man, the golden age when men lived like gods, free from toil and pain, the silver age when men were foolish and violent, the bronze age when warriors rose with weapons of bronze, the heroic age when demigods walked the earth, and the Iron Age, his own time filled with sorrow. These ages were not simply moral allegories. They were memories of cycles, of races that lived before ours, of destructions and renewals, of men who were more than men. Forbidden origins remembered as the story of ages. In the heroic age, the gods consorted with mortals, Zeus the most of all, fathering heroes across the land, Heracles the mighty, Perseus the slayer of Medusa, Helen the beauty who sparked a war, Achilles the invincible. Each carried divine blood, each was more than human. Their stories are filled with impossible feats. Their strength and destiny set them apart. They were not ordinary men. They were children of forbidden unions, forbidden origins remembered as heroic saga. The Trojan War itself is a tale of divine interference. It begins with a quarrel among goddesses. It unfolds with gods taking sides, Athena aiding the Greeks, Apollo aiding the Trojans, Aphrodite protecting Paris, Zeus himself weighing the fates. The war is fought by men, but guided by gods. Heroes die, but their destinies are shaped by beings greater than themselves. This is not human history alone. It is history written in the shadow of heaven, forbidden origins shaping even the wars of men. After the fall of Troy, the myths speak of survivors, Aeneas carrying his father from the flames. Guided by the gods, wandering across the sea, destined to found a new race. The Romans claimed him as their ancestor. They said his son, Iulus, was the founder of the Julian line, the family of Julius Caesar and Augustus. They said Venus was his mother. They said their empire was born from divine blood, forbidden origins woven into the very foundation of Rome. Rome itself was said to be founded by Romulus and Remus, twin brothers suckled by a she-wolf, children of Mars, the god of war and a mortal priestess. Once again, divine blood shapes the destiny of a people. Once again, gods mingle with mortals. Once again, forbidden unions produce founders. Romulus slays his brother, claims the throne, names the city after himself. Rome born of fratricide, Rome born of divine ancestry. Forbidden origins enshrined in legend. The myths of Greece and Rome are filled with gods at war, the Olympians against the Titans, the giants rising against heaven. Typhon, the monstrous serpent threatening Zeus himself, each war echoing the rebellion in heaven, each battle reflecting division among the divine, men watching, men caught between, men shaped by the outcome. These are not fairy tales. They are fragments of forbidden History preserved in poetry, carved in marble, whispered in ritual. Even the philosophers remembered. Plato spoke of Atlantis, a mighty race destroyed for its pride, a race descended from Poseidon and mortal women, half divine, half human, rulers of the sea, conquerors of lands. But corrupted, punished by the gods, their islands swallowed by the ocean, forbidden origins remembered as lost empire, a warning of divine judgment, a memory of hybrid rulers too powerful and too proud. The cults of Greece and Rome preserved the mysteries. Initiates of Eleusis reenacted the descent of Persephone. Initiates of Dionysus embraced ecstasy. Initiates of Mithras reenacted the slaying of the bull beneath the stars. These were not empty rituals. They were remembrances of older truths, symbols of forbidden origins, echoes of a time when men walked with gods, when men were children of divine fathers, when men were heirs of heavenly wars. The Romans inherited the Greek gods, gave them Latin names, but the memory remained. Jupiter the sky father, Mars the war god, Venus the mother. Saturn, once a ruler, cast down. The pattern never changes. Rebellion, war, hybrid offspring, forbidden unions, cycles of ages, heroes of divine blood, founding races born from gods and men, forbidden origins shaping the very identity of empires. What unites all these myths is the insistence that humanity's greatest founders, its greatest heroes, its greatest cities, were born not of mortals alone, but of divine ancestry, that races rose and fell because of divine will, that heroes could only achieve greatness because of their divine blood, that nations were founded by survivors chosen by the gods. These are not simple fables. They are the fragments of forbidden history. The truth remembered that humanity was shaped in the shadow of heavenly beings, that our origin is not simple, that our races and empires are the legacy of forbidden unions. Thus Greece and Rome joined Sumer and Egypt in the chorus. They tell us the same story. They tell us of rebellion in heaven, of gods at war, of divine kings, of demigods, of hybrid heroes, of nations founded by divine blood. They tell us that humanity is not alone, that humanity was shaped, that humanity remembers in myth what it cannot tell in history. They tell us our origins are forbidden because they reveal the truth, that we are children of heaven and earth, that we are heirs of rebellion and loyalty, that the war in heaven shaped not only our beginning, but our civilizations. So when we stand before the Parthenon or the Colosseum, when we read Homer or Virgil, when we see statues of gods and heroes, we are not only seeing art, we are seeing memory. We are seeing forbidden origins preserved in stone and word. We are seeing the testimony of ancestors who knew that their roots were not mortal alone, who knew their founders were children of gods, who knew that their story was born in the shadow of a war in heaven, a story forbidden yet never forgotten. Hindu and Vedic accounts of human lineages and cycles. When we turn our gaze to the east, we find another ancient tradition, vast and deep. The Vedic and Hindu accounts of creation, of gods and men, of lineages and cycles. These are not simple myths. They are hymns and scriptures. They are philosophies and epics. They are records of battles between heaven and shadow. They are memories of forbidden origins, preserved in mantras, in verses, in stories told for thousands of years. The Rig Veda, the oldest of the texts, speaks in hymns that are at once poetic and mysterious. It sings of Indra, the mighty thunder god, who slays the serpent Vritra, who releases the waters, who wins victory for the gods. This is not only a tale of weather, it is the memory of a cosmic battle, the storm god against the dragon, rebellion and war in heaven shaping the destiny of men, forbidden origins told in song. The Vedas also speak of the Asuras, beings of power, rivals to the Devas. At times they are noble, at times they are demonic, but always they are in conflict. Battles fought in heaven, on earth, and in the space between. Humanity caught in the middle, guided by rituals, guided by fire offerings, guided by hymns. Forbidden origins recorded as eternal struggle, light and shadow locked in endless war. The Purusha Sukta tells of the cosmic being. Purusha, sacrificed by the gods, his body divided. From his mouth came the Brahmins, from his arms the warriors, from his thighs the merchants, from his feet the workers. This hymn explains the origins of social order, but it is also the memory of creation born of sacrifice, the body of a cosmic ancestor divided to form the world. Forbidden origins echoing the slaying of Ymir in Norse myth, the slaying of Tiamat in Babylon, creation born from divine violence. The Puranas expand the story. They speak of cycles of time, the Yugas, the Satya Yuga of truth, the Treta Yuga, the Dvapara Yuga, the Kali Yuga of darkness, each age lasting thousands of years, each age declining, each age ending in destruction, then renewed. Humanity is not fixed. It is born and reborn. It rises and falls, always under the shadow of heavenly conflict. Forbidden origins remembered as cycles of time too vast to comprehend. The Mahabharata, one of the greatest epics of the world, tells of a war between cousins, the Pandavas and the Kauravas. But behind the human struggle are gods. Krishna, the avatar of Vishnu, guiding Arjuna, celestial weapons given, chariots flying, like machines of fire, battles that shake the earth. This is not only a human war, it is the echo of the war in heaven. It is forbidden origins remembered as epic. Heroes who are sons of gods, warriors guided by avatars, humanity caught in the struggle of the divine. In the Bhagavad Gita, a part of the Mahabharata, Krishna reveals to Arjuna the nature of the universe, the eternal war between duty and desire, the eternal cycle of birth and death, the eternal reality beyond. Here we see forbidden knowledge given directly, the wisdom of an avatar, teaching mankind its place in the cosmic struggle, reminding Arjuna that he is part of a story older than himself, that his lineage is tied to the divine, that his duty is participation in the eternal war. The Ramayana tells another story, Rama, another avatar of Vishnu, born to restore order, his wife Sita stolen by Ravana, king of demons. The war that follows filled with armies of monkeys and celestial beings, Rama aided by Hanuman, his loyal servant. The battle culminating in the destruction of Ravana and the triumph of Dharma. Again forbidden origins preserved in epic. Humanity guided by avatars, demons and gods battling through men. The war in heaven played out on earth. The avatars of Vishnu are themselves a testimony of forbidden origins. Whenever the balance is broken, whenever demons rise, Vishnu descends, sometimes as a fish, sometimes as a boar, sometimes as a man-lion, sometimes as Krishna, sometimes as Rama, each time restoring order, each time guiding mankind. The pattern of intervention clear. Humanity is not left alone. Humanity is shaped. Humanity is guided. Our origins tied to beings who descend when needed. Forbidden origins preserved in cycles of descent. The lineages of kings in India also claim divine ancestry. The solar dynasty descended from the sun god. Surya, the lunar dynasty, descended from the moon, their kings remembered as semi-divine, their rule justified by ancestry that was more than human. Again the theme repeats. Rulers as children of heaven, nations as heirs of divine fathers. Forbidden origins remembered as genealogy. The concept of karma and rebirth also ties into forbidden origins, for it suggests that humanity's story is not only collective but individual. Each soul moving through cycles, each birth the result of past actions, each life a step in an eternal struggle, the war in heaven reflected in every soul's journey, each human a participant in the cosmic order, each human's origin tied not only to flesh but to spirit, forbidden origins preserved as philosophy. The Vedic and Hindu traditions show us that humanity is part of cycles, part of wars, part of lineages that connect directly to the divine. They tell us our ancestors were avatars, were sons of gods, were hybrids. They tell us creation itself was born of sacrifice, of war, of conflict. They tell us humanity rises and falls through ages. They tell us that demons and gods still walk among us, that we are never alone, that our roots are forbidden because they are too vast, too strange, too dangerous for the modern mind to accept. When we listen to the hymns of the Rig Veda, when we read the verses of the Gita, when we hear the stories of Rama and Krishna, we are hearing echoes of forbidden origins. We are hearing the same story as Sumer and Egypt and Greece, told in another tongue, with other names, but always the same. Rebellion in heaven, war among gods, humanity shaped in the aftermath, hybrid, heroes born, divine avatars descending, cycles of destruction and renewal, the war in heaven remembered, forbidden origins preserved. Thus the Hindu and Vedic accounts join the chorus. They tell us humanity's story is not linear, but cyclical. They tell us our ancestors were divine and human. They tell us our world is shaped by wars beyond our sight. They tell us that creation itself is the body of a slain being. They tell us that avatars descend to guide. They tell us that humanity's roots are not only earthly, they are cosmic. They are forbidden. They are written in song and epic. They are whispered in temples. They are remembered still. The biblical narrative of Adam, Noah, and the nations. When we turn to the sacred writings of the Bible, we find another voice in the chorus of humanity's origins. Here, too, the story is not simple. Here, too, the story speaks of forbidden knowledge, of rebellion in heaven, of unions between divine beings and mortals, of floods that destroyed the world, of nations scattered and divided. The Bible is often read as spiritual text, but it is also a record of forbidden origins, a testimony preserved across centuries, whispering the same themes as Sumer and Egypt and India, yet with its own voice, its own warnings, its own revelations. In the beginning, the Bible tells of Adam and Eve, the first humans placed in a garden, living in innocence, yet confronted with a serpent, a being of cunning, who offered forbidden knowledge, who promised that their eyes would be opened, who promised they would be like gods. They took the fruit, they ate, their eyes were opened, and they fell. This is not simply a story of disobedience. It is the story of rebellion echoing in mankind. The serpent, a rebel from heaven, the humans tempted to join. The result, exile, toil, pain, the war in heaven touching earth. Forbidden origins preserved as the very beginning of humanity's story. Later the Bible speaks of the sons of God who saw the daughters of men, who took them as wives, who fathered children, mighty men of old, giants, the Nephilim, beings of great strength, beings of great corruption, hybrids of heaven and earth. This short passage in Genesis is among the most forbidden of all, for it suggests that heavenly beings descended, that they mingled with humanity, that they produced offspring who shook the world, that humanity's corruption was linked to these unions, that the flood itself was judgment not only on men, but on the forbidden offspring of divine rebellion. The flood story of Noah is one of the central accounts of the Bible. It echoes the flood of Mesopotamia. It tells of God deciding that the earth was filled with violence and corruption. It tells of Noah, chosen to survive, told to build an ark, told to preserve the seed of life. The waters came. The world was destroyed. Only Noah and his family survived. This is not only judgment on mankind, it is judgment on the forbidden offspring. The Nephilim destroyed, the world cleansed, Humanity given a new beginning, forbidden origins buried beneath the waters, preserved only in fragments of memory. After the flood, the Bible tells of Noah's sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth. From them the nations spread. The table of nations in Genesis records the tribes, the peoples, the lands. This is not myth, but genealogy, an attempt to explain the divisions of humanity. Yet hidden within is the memory of scattering, of division by divine decree, of nations shaped not only by blood, but by judgment, forbidden origins preserved as lineage. The Tower of Babel deepens the story. Humanity gathered as one, building a tower to reach the heavens, a ziggurat of pride, a monument to unity without obedience. The text says that God came down, that he scattered their languages, that he divided the peoples, that he stopped their project. Here again we see the forbidden theme, humanity attempting to cross the boundary, to ascend, to reclaim forbidden knowledge, and being judged, scattered, divided into nations, tongues confused, diversity of language born from rebellion, forbidden origins remembered as scattering. The Bible also preserves glimpses of heavenly wars. Isaiah speaks of Lucifer, son of the morning, who said he would ascend above the stars, who was cast down. Revelation speaks of Michael and his angels fighting the dragon, of the dragon cast to earth, of war in heaven continuing, of humanity caught in the middle, forbidden origins preserved in prophetic vision, rebellion in heaven directly connected to events on earth. The giants return even after the flood, the Anakim, the Rephaim, Goliath of Gath, mighty, warriors who terrified Israel, remnants of the forbidden unions, shadows of the Nephilim, proof that the war in heaven was not fully ended by the flood, proof that forbidden origins still haunted humanity, fragments of divine rebellion still walking among men. The prophets spoke often of nations as instruments of judgment, of Babylon raised to punish, of Assyria brought low, of Israel scattered and regathered. Behind these nations lay spiritual powers, principalities, and dominions. The Bible hints that the nations themselves are ruled by heavenly beings, some loyal, some rebel. Humanity's divisions not random, but reflections of heavenly conflict, forbidden origins of nations preserved in prophecy. The New Testament speaks again of forbidden origins, Jesus says. In the days before the flood they were eating and drinking, marrying and giving in marriage, until Noah entered the ark, a reminder of the corruption of the Nephilim, a warning that the end will echo the beginning. Paul speaks of rulers and powers of the air, spiritual forces of darkness. Revelation reveals beasts rising, nations ruled by dragons, humanity again caught in the war in heaven. Forbidden origins remembered in apocalyptic vision. The biblical story is often presented as moral, as spiritual, but beneath it lies the same forbidden pattern we have seen in every culture, a creation shaped by rebellion, a fall through forbidden knowledge, unions between heavenly beings and mortals, hybrids born, corruption spreading, floods cleansing, nations scattered, languages divided, giants walking, heavenly wars raging. Humanity shaped in the midst of it all, forbidden origins preserved in Scripture, forbidden because they reveal too much, forbidden because they link humanity to a cosmic war. What makes the Bible unique is its insistence on a single God above all, yet within that framework, it preserves the same memories, the same fragments, the same forbidden truths. It tells us humanity is not only dust, but breath, not only mortal, but touched by the divine, not only physical, but spiritual. It tells us we are heirs of Adam, survivors of Noah, scattered from Babel, caught between Michael and the dragon, children of a forbidden story that began before history itself. So when we read of Adam and Eve, when we hear of the serpent, when we remember Noah, when we study the table of nations, when we ponder Babel, when we see Goliath fall before David, when we read Revelation of the dragon's war, we are not only reading religious text, we are hearing echoes of forbidden origins. We are hearing the same story as Sumer, as Egypt, as India, but given new voice, a voice that insists humanity's fate is bound to the war in heaven, a voice that tells us our origins are forbidden but real, a voice that has shaped nations for millennia, the scattering of peoples and the mystery of diversity. When we look across the face of the earth today, we see diversity of color, of language, of custom, of belief. We see nations divided by seas and deserts, by mountains and forests. We see tribes with different gods, different names for the stars, different myths of the beginning. Yet behind all of this difference lies a single question. How did humanity scatter? How did one people become many? How did one voice become many tongues? The ancient texts all speak of this mystery. They all tell us that division was not accident, it was judgment, it was consequence, it was the result of forbidden origins. The story of Babel in the Bible speaks most directly. It tells of men united in speech, united in purpose. They said, "Let us build a city and a tower to reach the heavens. Let us make a name for ourselves. Let us not be scattered." They built bricks, they raised walls, their pride rose with the tower. But the Lord came down. He saw, he judged, he confused their tongues, he scattered them across the earth. The tower abandoned, the project ended, the nations born. Here is the forbidden origin of diversity. Not natural, but imposed. Not chance, but judgment. A divine response to rebellion. The Sumerians too remembered. Their texts speak of Enmerkar and the Lord of Aratta. They tell of a time when all men spoke the same language. They tell of the confusion of tongues. They tell of the scattering of people, a parallel to Babel, and see, older echo, the same forbidden story, the same explanation of diversity. Humanity divided by divine will, humanity scattered in consequence of pride and rebellion. Other cultures preserve similar memories. The Maya speak of the gods giving languages to the tribes, dividing them, preventing unity. The Greeks speak of Zeus striking men with division, scattering tribes after hubris. The Hindus speak of castes born from the body of Purusha, divisions inscribed at creation, everywhere the same theme. Humanity was once one, then divided, divided by divine act, divided as consequence. Diversity itself, a reminder of forbidden origins. Archaeology shows migration across continents. Genetics shows branching lineages. Yet the myths tell us the deeper story. They tell us humanity resisted scattering. They sought unity. But unity without obedience became rebellion. They sought to climb to heaven, to reclaim forbidden knowledge, and they were judged, scattered by force, diversity born of punishment. Forbidden origins hidden beneath culture and language, hidden beneath skin and custom, but remembered in myth. The scattering of peoples is also tied to geography, to floods and disasters. After the great flood, survivors spread, mountains rose, seas widened, tribes isolated. Each carried fragments of the forbidden story. Each preserved them in myth, in ritual, in song, but separated. They changed, details altered, names shifted. Yet the pattern remained, the memory of rebellion, the memory of war. In heaven, the memory of division. Forbidden origins carried across continents in the stories of tribes. Even the Bible's Table of Nations reflects this. It records the sons of Noah spreading, Japheth to the north, Ham to the south, Shem to the east. It records tribes and lands. It records Nimrod the mighty one, builder of Babel, the scattering remembered as genealogy. Forbidden origins explained as descent, yet beneath the names lies the same truth. Humanity once one, humanity divided. Nations, born in judgment. The scattering also explains myths of chosen peoples. Each nation remembered itself as heir of the divine. Each tribe said, "We are the children of the gods." The Hebrews said they were chosen. The Greeks said they were descended from Zeus, the Egyptians from Ra, the Indians from solar and lunar dynasties, the Chinese from the Yellow Emperor, the Mayans from the feathered serpent, the Inca from Viracocha. Each preserved their divine ancestry. Each preserved forbidden origins. Each remembered their own path from the scattering. But why was unity forbidden? Why was diversity imposed? The text suggests that unity in rebellion is more dangerous than diversity. That when men unite to reclaim forbidden knowledge, they challenge heaven itself. That scattering prevents this. Scattering divides power. Scattering weakens pride. Scattering ensures the war in heaven does not repeat on earth in full. Diversity is thus both punishment and protection. It is a wound and a shield. It is forbidden origin, embedded in our very differences. The mystery of diversity also connects to myths of giants and hybrids, the Nephilim destroyed in the flood. Yet their shadows remain. Anakim in Canaan, giants in Greek tales, titans in myth, Fomorians in Ireland, Rakshasas in India, all scattered remnants of forbidden unions. Not only men were divided, but their hybrid offspring scattered or destroyed. Forbidden origins remembered as monstrous tribes at the edges of the world, always present in memory, always haunting the borders. The scattering also explains why myths are similar, yet different. Why Sumer speaks of Anunnaki, Egypt of Neteru, India of Devas, Greece of Olympians, Norse of Aesir. Names differ because tongues differ. But the root story is the same: rebellion, war, creation, hybrid offspring, floods, scattering, nations, forbidden origins preserved in fragments across the world, diversity itself. The evidence that the story is real, that one memory split into many voices, even science, though it speaks in other terms, echoes the myth. It says humanity came from one root, that we spread, that tongues branched, that tribes divided, that migrations carried us across the earth. It does not speak of Babel, but the pattern is the same. One origin, many branches. The difference is meaning. The myths say division was judgment. Science says it was chance. Forbidden origins say it was rebellion. Scattered so that men would not again unite against heaven. So when we look at the faces of humanity, when we hear languages rise and fall, when we see customs strange and foreign, we are not only seeing diversity, we are seeing memory. We are seeing the result of forbidden origins. We are seeing the aftermath of rebellion. We are seeing the judgment of heaven written in skin and tongue. We are seeing the scattering of peoples. We are hearing the forbidden story, whispered across every culture. We are remembering that we were once one, that we were divided, that our diversity is the mark of a war in heaven, forbidden archaeology, and the memory of shining ancestors. When we leave behind the written myths and turn to the stones themselves, we find that the earth whispers the same forbidden story. Monuments too vast, alignments too precise, ruins too advanced, artifacts that do not fit the timeline, skeletons that speak of beings too tall, legends tied to landscapes that still stand. This is the domain of forbidden archaeology, where history and myth blur, where the memory of shining ancestors still lingers in stone and soil, where humanity confronts the possibility that the war in heaven left traces we can still touch. In Mesopotamia, the ziggurats rise like stairways to the sky. Their bricks still stand. Their shapes echo the Tower of Babel. Their names, like Itemenanki, mean the house of the foundation of heaven and earth. They are not only temples, but symbols. Symbols of a time when men built to connect with the gods. Symbols of descent and ascent, echoes of forbidden origins preserved in brick and clay. In Egypt, the pyramids tower over the desert, their stones cut with precision, their alignment with Orion and Sirius exact, shafts pointing to stars, proportions echoing the Earth itself. The Great Pyramid, a mystery even now. Was it tomb? Was it temple? Was it machine? The ancients said it was a stairway to the stars, a place where the pharaoh ascended to join the gods, forbidden origins preserved in stone geometry. Monuments that remember shining ancestors. At Puma Pusunku in Bolivia, we find stones carved with angles so precise that they seem machine-cut. Blocks weighing tons fitted like puzzle pieces, their origin shrouded, their purpose unclear. Local legends speak of Viracocha, the Shining One, who walked among men, who taught them, who left across the sea. The stones are his memory. The stones whisper forbidden origins, the memory of shining ancestors etched into the mountains. In Baalbek, in Lebanon, we see trilithon stones, each weighing hundreds of tons, placed in the foundation of a temple larger than any technology of their time could explain. Legends say giants built them. Legends say the gods descended there. Legends say it was a landing place for heaven's chariots. Forbidden archaeology in plain sight. Stones too large for men alone. Stones tied to shining beings. In Mexico, the pyramids of Teotihuacan rise, the avenue of the dead aligned with celestial cycles, the pyramid of the sun immense, the pyramid of the moon mirroring the heavens. The legends say the gods gathered there to bring forth the sun, the city built for the gods, not for men. Forbidden origins preserved in stone, monuments aligned with shining ancestors. In England, the stones of Stonehenge stand, aligned with solstice, sunrise. Each stone dragged miles, each placed with intent, the builders unknown, the purpose ceremonial and celestial. Legends say giants built it. Legends say Merlin brought the stones from across the sea. Forbidden archaeology, preserved as circle of stone. Memory of a people guided by shining ancestors. In the deserts of Nazca in Peru, the lines stretch across the earth, figures of animals, spirals, lines that can only be seen from the air. The purpose unknown. Offerings to gods, maps of stars, signals to the sky. Forbidden archaeology, carved in desert. Memory of those who came from above. Memory of shining beings. In India, the temples of Ellora and Ajanta, carved into solid rock, vast halls, pillars, chambers, carved with such precision. Legends say they were made by gods, by beings of immense power. Forbidden archaeology preserved in living stone. Memory of ancestors who were more than human. Across the world we find megaliths, dolmens, circles, alignments, all tied to the heavens, all echoing myths of gods, all whispering the same forbidden story. Humanity guided, humanity taught, humanity building not alone, but under the shadow of shining ancestors, their memory preserved in stone. Artifacts too whisper forbidden origins, small figurines of beings with helmets and wings found in Sumer, golden planes in Colombia shaped like modern aircraft, batteries in Baghdad that could carry current, maps from ancient times showing Antarctica without ice, each anomaly a fragment, each fragment a reminder that knowledge was given, that memory of shining ancestors is not only in myth, but in artifact, forbidden archaeology scattered across museums and collections. Even skeletons tell the story. Bones of giants whispered of, skulls with elongated shapes found in Peru and Egypt. Traditions of head binding preserving the memory of shining ones with long heads. Tribes imitating their ancestors. Forbidden origins remembered in flesh and bone. The shining ancestors themselves appear in every myth. In Sumer, the Anunnaki. In Egypt, the Neteru. In India, the Devas. In Greece, the Olympians. In the Americas, the feathered serpent and Viracocha. In Africa, the sky beings who came with fire, always shining, always radiant, always more than human. Their Memory preserved in names, in rituals, in monuments, forbidden origins remembered across the earth. Why do we call them shining? Because every culture describes them as radiant, as clothed in light, as descending in fire, as beings whose faces shone like the sun, as gods whose presence blinded. The Bible speaks of angels whose appearance was like lightning. Egypt carved gods with sun discs above their heads. Sumer drew beings with radiant crowns. Shining is the common word. Shining is the memory. Shining is the mark of ancestry that is forbidden. Forbidden archaeology thus becomes the witness. It is the evidence that myth is not fantasy. It is the stone that speaks when texts are gone. It is the artifact that whispers when memory fades. It is the ruin that refuses to fit the timeline. It is the testimony of shining ancestors carved into the very earth. It tells us humanity was not alone. It tells us humanity was guided. It tells us humanity's roots are forbidden because they reveal too much, because they tell us the war in heaven was real, and its traces remain. So when we walk among the pyramids, when we trace the Nazca lines, when we stand before Stonehenge, when we see the stones of Baalbek, when we touch the carvings of Pumapunku, we are not only seeing ruins, we are seeing memory. We are seeing forbidden origins preserved in stone. We are seeing the shadow of shining ancestors who walked among men. We are seeing the forbidden story carved into the face of the earth, the war in heaven and its earthly reflections. When we gather all the fragments of myth and scripture and stone, we find that one theme rises again and again. It is the theme of rebellion among the divine, of battles fought in heaven, of brothers turned against one another, of shining beings cast down, of humanity shaped in the aftermath. This is the war in heaven, the forbidden story behind all origins, the story that every culture remembers in its own way, the story that explains not only where we came from, but why we are divided, why we struggle, why our history is filled with endless war. The Bible speaks of it directly. It tells of Michael and his angels fighting the dragon and his angels cast to the earth. It tells of Lucifer who said, "I will ascend," who said, "I will be like the Most High," who was cast down. It tells of a third of the stars falling. This is not metaphor alone. It is memory. Memory of rebellion, memory of heavenly war, memory of a conflict so vast that the earth itself bears its scars. The Sumerians remember the Agige rebelling against Enlil, refusing their toil, demanding freedom. The Anunnaki responding by creating man to bear the burden. Humanity born in the shadow of rebellion, born as replacement for fallen servants. Forbidden origins shaped by the war in heaven. The Babylonians remembered Marduk fighting Tiamat, chaos rising against order, Marduk splitting her body, creation born of battle. The war in heaven remembered as cosmic struggle, the very earth fashioned from the corpse of rebellion. The Greeks remembered the Titanomachy, the sons rising against the father, the Titans cast into Tartarus, the Olympians ruling, the Gigantomachy too, giants rising against the gods, Heracles aiding in victory, rebellion, war, loyalty, hybrid heroes, forbidden origins remembered as divine battles. The Norse remembered Odin and his brothers slaying Ymir, the first giant, fashioning the world from his body, remembered Ragnarok, the final war, gods and giants killing one another, fire consuming the earth, a new world rising. The war in heaven not only past, but future, forbidden origins remembered as eternal conflict. The Hindus remembered the Devas and Asuras locked in endless war, Indra slaying the serpent Vritra, Vishnu descending as Avatar, gods and demons churning the ocean, seeking immortality, rebellion, alliance, betrayal. The war in heaven remembered as eternal struggle between light and shadow, preserved in hymns, preserved in epic. The Egyptians remembered Set killing Osiris, Horus battling Set, gods divided, thrones contested, dynasties of heaven at war, humanity caught in the middle, pharaohs claiming descent from victors. The war in heaven remembered as political and cosmic struggle. The Americas remembered feathered serpents, battling fiery lords, Viracocha driving out giants, Quetzalcoatl betrayed by Tezcatlipoca, shining beings at war, humanity shaped in the aftermath, forbidden origins preserved in myth of the Anisi. Sky everywhere we turn, we find the same memory, the war in heaven. Shining beings divided, rebellion rising, battles fought, losers cast down, winners ruling, humanity caught in between, humanity created, guided, or judged as part of the conflict. Forbidden origins preserved as myth, yet pointing to a deeper truth. The earthly reflections of this war are seen in our own history, in endless wars between tribes, in empires rising and falling, in fratricide and betrayal, in brother against brother. In kingship contested, our wars mirror the wars of heaven. Our rebellions mirror their rebellion. Our bloodshed echoes their battles, the forbidden story written in our own history. Repeated in every age, kings and rulers often claim to act in the name of heaven, some claiming descent from loyal gods, some claiming to inherit power from fallen ones. Nations claimed their God had given them victory. Nations claimed their enemies were children of darkness. The war in heaven reflected in the wars of earth, forbidden origins shaping politics and religion alike. Even within us, the war is reflected, the struggle between light and darkness, between obedience and rebellion, between truth and pride. Our own souls echo the cosmic conflict. Our own choices mirror the war in heaven. We are children of both, heirs of both, caught between loyalty and rebellion, forbidden origins preserved in the heart of every man. The war in heaven explains why humanity is fractured, why diversity was imposed, why nations rise and fall, why kings claim divine blood, why myths speak of battles among the gods. It explains the monuments, the epics, the scriptures. It explains the forbidden archaeology. It explains why every culture remembers, for the war in heaven was the origin of all, the backdrop of humanity's birth, the forbidden story that ties every myth together. So when we read of Michael and the dragon, when we hear of Zeus overthrowing Cronus, when we tell of Horus avenging Osiris, when we sing of Indra slaying Vritra, when we remember Ragnarok, when we stand before the pyramids, when we trace the Nazca lines, when we see giants in myth, we are not hearing isolated tales. We are hearing the same forbidden story. The war in heaven and its earthly reflections, the story of rebellion that shaped creation, the story of loyalty that preserved it, the story that humanity has never forgotten. The war in heaven is forbidden because it reveals too much. It reveals that our origins are not simple. It reveals that we are children of conflict. It reveals that our history is shadow of cosmic battle. It reveals that our destiny is tied to the outcome. It reveals that we are participants, not spectators. It reveals that we are heirs of rebellion and loyalty alike. It reveals that the war in heaven is not only past, but present. It reveals that it is not finished. And so the war in heaven remains the central thread, the unifying theme, the secret behind forbidden origins, the story whispered in every myth, the truth preserved in every stone, the reason humanity is what it is, the reason we struggle, the reason we remember. The war in heaven is the key, and its reflection is seen everywhere upon the earth, the final cycle and the return of the forbidden origins. When we gather the fragments of myth and memory, we find that none of them tell us the story has ended. Every tradition speaks of cycles. Every scripture warns of an end that mirrors the beginning. Every culture whispers of a time when the forbidden origins will return, when the shining ancestors will once again walk among men, when the war in heaven will break upon the earth, when the final cycle will arrive. The Hindus speak of the Kali, Yuga, the Dark Age, the last of the cycles, when truth is diminished, when corruption reigns, when wars and greed consume the earth. When Dharma is broken, they say Vishnu will descend again as Kalki, riding a white horse, wielding a blazing sword, to destroy the wicked, to end the age, to begin anew. This is not only prophecy, it is memory of cycles past. It is promise that the war in heaven will return, that humanity's story is not complete, that the forbidden origins will rise again. The Norse speak of Ragnarok, the twilight of the gods, when the wolf Fenrir breaks his chains, when the serpent Jormungandr rises from the sea, when fire consumes the world, when Odin falls, when Thor dies, when the gods and giants slay one another, when the world sinks, but then rises new, green, fresh, with survivors who remember. This too is the forbidden story, the war in heaven repeated, the cycle returning, the final battle before renewal. The Greeks spoke of ages of decline, of iron men filled with strife, of Zeus ending the race when time is right. They spoke of the return of Kronos, the golden age reborn. They spoke of heroes rising again. Fragments of the same story, that the cycle does not end, that the forbidden origins return, that the divine war comes again. The Bible speaks of the end as well. Jesus says, "As it was in the days of Noah, so it will be at the coming of the Son of Man." In Noah's days the Nephilim walked. Forbidden unions corrupted mankind. The flood came. The end was judgment, so too will the end repeat the beginning. Revelation speaks of beasts rising from the sea and earth, of a dragon cast down, of war in heaven, of nations deceived, of judgment by fire, of a new heaven and earth. The final cycle is the return of the forbidden origins, the return of the war in heaven, the return of shining ancestors now revealed as angels and demons. The prophets speak of giants returning, of fallen ones rising from the pit, of nations gathering against the throne of heaven, of Armageddon, the final battle, echoes of Ragnarok, echoes of the Mahabharata, echoes of every myth, forbidden origins not buried, but returning, the war in heaven not finished, but nearing its end. The Mayans spoke of cycles too, of suns that rose and fell, of worlds destroyed by flood, by fire, by jaguars, of our own age destined to end. The Aztecs spoke of the fifth sun, doomed to destruction. The Hopi spoke of worlds destroyed and renewed, all remembering the same forbidden story, all warning that the cycle ends with judgment and renewal, all warning that the shining ones will return. Even modern myths carry the same echo, tales of watchers in the sky, tales of beings descending, tales of abductions and contact. Ancient astronaut theories are modern language for ancient memory, the shining ancestors remembered as visitors from the stars, forbidden origins reinterpreted for a scientific age, yet always the same theme. Humanity not alone, humanity guided, humanity judged, humanity awaiting return. The monuments themselves seem to point forward, the pyramids aligned to Orion, the Mayan temples aligned to solstices, Stonehenge to the sun, all calendars, all clocks, all warning of cycles, all whispering that the forbidden origins return when the stars align, all built to preserve the memory of cycles, all pointing to the final one. The war in heaven is not past, it is ongoing. Every nation that rises and falls is reflection. Every war we fight is shadow. Every division of people echoes Babel. Every empire repeats Atlantis. Every corruption repeats the Nephilim. We live in the shadow of forbidden origins. We live in the tension between rebellion and loyalty. We live in the cycle approaching its end. The final cycle is forbidden because it reveals destiny. It reveals that humanity will once again face the beings it calls gods, or angels, or shining ancestors. It reveals that judgment will come. It reveals that the war in heaven will once more break into The Earth. It reveals that humanity's roots were never left behind. They are returning. They are unfolding before us. What will it look like? The texts say the skies will open, the powers of heaven shaken, the sun darkened, the stars falling, beings descending, giants rising, nations trembling, men seeking death and not finding it, fire consuming, waters roaring, mountains falling, the war in heaven crashing upon the world. The final cycle of forbidden origins revealed, yet every text also promises renewal. After Ragnarok, a green earth. After Kalki, a Satya Yuga of truth. After Revelation, a new heaven and earth. After every destruction, a new creation. After every judgment, a new beginning. The forbidden story is not only of doom, it is of hope. It is of cycles. It is of rebirth. It is of humanity surviving. It is of humanity remembering. The final cycle is not the end, but the return of the forbidden origins, the return of the shining ancestors, the return of the war in heaven, the return of the story that has always shaped us. It is the fulfillment of memory, the completion of prophecy, the closing of the circle. So when we look to the stars, when we read the myths, when we see the ruins, when we hear the warnings, we must remember. We must remember that our origins were forbidden, that our history was shaped by rebellion, that our ancestors were shining beings, that our monuments are clocks, that our diversity is judgment, that our future is the return. We must remember that the war in heaven is not finished, that we are children of its story, that the final cycle will come. And when it does, we will see the truth. We will see the shining ones. We will see the return of forbidden origins. We will see the war in heaven unfold. We will see the end that is also the beginning, the forbidden history of humanity revealed at last.